The Lunaverse, concept created by Rainbow Double Dash. Episode 6, Ill Communication by RK Striker. Chapter 1. Trixie approached her destination, steps growing more and more hesitant as it loomed in her view. She took a deep breath and squared her upper body, making sure her hat was on straight and her cape hung over her body as a makeshift armor against the task before her. I am Trixie, she declared to herself. I am the personal student of Princess Luna, bearer of the element of magic. She stomped a hoof into the dirt. This is nothing for me. I faced down Corona, saving Equestria. I can do this. I must do this. She trotted forward, not even stopping as she entered Secret Cube Corner, the bell of the door dangling. Behind the glass pane display counter stood Carrot-Cake, co-owner and current salvation for Trixie. She trotted up to him and smiled. Hello, Mr. Cake. Trot looked down at the counter and the wares within. I'd like a dozen muffins, please. Carrot-Cake nodded and leaned down, sliding the back door display counter with a hoof. Why, certainly, Miss Lou. A soft, tiny sound behind the service door caught his attention, and his head shot back up. Oh, dear, Cupcake. How's the product? Cupcake poked her head out of the saloon doors that led back into the back areas of Sugar Cube Corner. I might need some help, she said to her husband. A sudden banging sent her a few inches in the air. I'll send Pinkie out to behind the counter. Carrot nodded and looked back to Trixie. Sorry, Miss Trixie, just a second. With that, he walked back into the kitchen. Trixie's eyes widened, even as a pink bundle of hyper-condensed air bounded out, landing right in front of the counter. No! No! She took a step back and lowered her head, letting the brim of her hat cover her eyes. Why, Princess Luna, why? Pinkie Pie waved a foreleg as Trixie moaned, grinning madly. Yes, yes! She hopped up on her hind legs and leaned on the counter. So, Miss Little Moon, well, me, do you want cake, pastries, gumballs? Her eyes widened. Oh, maybe some cupcakes! She leaned down and grabbed a tray of expertly decorated cupcakes, the frosting covering the tops with little smiles and hearts. I bet it's cupcakes you want! Trixie's mane bristled as her hated last name, but she simply shook her head, sliding another hoof back. I simply want a dozen muffins to go. No cakes, no pastries, and certainly no cupcakes. She jabbed a hoof at a tray laden with blueberry muffins. Those are fine, Pinkie Pie. Just box them up and... Pinkie Pie groaned and twisted her head around almost 180 degrees, rolling her eyes to the floor. Oh, come on! Muffins are so boring! She twisted her head back, causing Trixie's eyes to spin and a mild wave of vertigo to hit. She slid the tray of cupcakes forward, almost to the edge of the counter. They're so pretty and colorful and fun! Bing, 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 bing. She batted her eyelashes at Trixie. So, what do you say? Anger built up in Trixie's torso. She squelched it and stepped back to the counter, leaned over to the top, cocking an eye at Pinkie Pie. I am going to Ditsy's house this afternoon for lunch, she said through gritty face. She and Dickie like muffins, Pinkie. Not cupcakes, muffins. And I know their favorite is blueberry. So, box up 1 dozen blueberry muffins, she said, her voice rising with every word. Carrot-Cake's head popped over the saloon doors. His lantern jaw covered a fine layer of flour. Everything all right? He asked, eyes slightly wide. Trixie glanced over the corners of her mouth, turning up into a forced grin. Fine. Just fine, Mr. Cake. She looked back to Pinkie and fixed a glare of death upon the pink pony. Miss Pie was just about to box up 1 dozen muffins for me, right? Pinkie's head and neck drooped and she sighed. Oh, all right. She gripped a tray of muffins out with her teeth and slid a box over with a hoof, letting a dozen tumble into it. She closed and tied it shut before popping it into the counter. 15 bits for the boring muffins. Trixie's cape fluttered as 15 bits floated out of her saddlebags and over the counter. Pinkie jabbed at the till and the door troughed open, allowing her to float the bits inside while also levitating the box of muffins up into her side. Thank you. It was a full 2 minutes of trotting away from Sugar Cube Corner before Trixie slowed down to a slow gait. She breathed in, slowly letting the air out. She felt a few stares from others out on the street, but paid them little mind, not wanting attention this time, as she resumed her journey to the Ponyville post office. It was nearly 11:30 when Trixie reached the post office, the two-story building that kept Ponyville in contact with the rest of Equestria. A few Pegasi milled about the entrance, each one clad in the blue uniform of the Equestrian Postal Service. She quickly focused on one particular gray-coated Pegasus as she entered the building. "Ditsy!" she called out, waving a foreleg at her fellow element. Ditsy's right eye slid over and locked onto Trixie as he turned. "Hi!" she shouted. Her muzzle twitched and nostrils flared as he approached. "Are those muffins?" she asked, turning her head to focus one eye on the packets floating next to Trixie. "Blueberry muffins?" Trixie bit her lip, but a snort of laughter still escaped. She went back to the post office, then to Ditsy and her empty saddlebags. "Your shift over?" She at Ditsy's nod. Trixie arched an eyebrow and looked her over. "I'm not the most patient pony, but even I can wait out of your change you out of your uniform." Ditsy shook her head. She hopped into the air and jammed a foreleg in the general direction of the Everfree. "Dickie's waiting for me," she stated, landing and beginning to trot off. Trixie nodded. Of course, her job with Fluttershy. She suddenly stopped and looked back at the post office in the apartment on the second floor. "Perhaps I should wait here for you two to come back." Ditsy placed a hoof on Trixie's shoulder and shook her head. "Dinkie's been looking forward to this all week. I wouldn't want to disappoint your number one fan, would you?" She leaned in and forced an eyelid closed for an approximation of a wink. Trixie let out a sigh and placed a foreleg to her forehead before trotting off down a long, meandering side road that led from the post office to Fluttershy's cottage. "For her, of course. I just hope—" Her voice trailed off, and the package ticked and tilted, showing the top and the Sugar Cube corner logo on top. I'm sorry. It's just that Pinkie Pie. Yeah!" She threw her hose in the air. "Why is it that every time I go in there, fate conspires to have her waiting on me?" Dizzy shrugged as he continued walking. "She means well, Trixie, and her parties can be fun." As Cylon glanced at the unicorn, she scratched the back of her head. "Well, in small doses they can be fun." The pair continued in silence for a few minutes before Trixie spoke up. "I try, Ditsy. I swear I try. But no matter what, she just pushes my buttons. And she makes about as much sense as Ivory Scroll's plans for winter wrap-up." Ditsy's mouth puckered slightly. "But the mayor didn't have any plans for—" "Oh," she sighed. "Well, you don't see her every day, right?" "And thank Luna for that," Trixie muttered. She glanced up at the sky and shivered slightly as the sun reached its peak, her hat tucking down over her head as much as possible. "I shudder to think what my mind would be like if I had to understand her for something important or vital. Might as well just sit back and wait for the sky itself to fall if it ever came to that." She chuckled, but her head suddenly shot up. She looked at the bright expanse of blue. She held a hoof about and waved it. Then she stopped in place. And looked at her friend. "Sky still in place?" she asked, the slightest hint of sarcasm in her tone. Trixie nodded and continued on, speeding up until she was once more by Ditsy's side. "Never hurts to be too careful." My little pony, ah, my little pony, friendship never meant that much to me, my little pony. But now you're all here, and now I can see stormy weather, a loss to share, a musical bond, with love and care, teaching laughter, it's an easy feat, and magic makes it all complete. You have my little ponies. How did I ever make so many true friends? Produced by Rainbow Double Dash. It can happen only on the Hub. My Little Pony created by Hasbro. Live read by Marcella Freezer. Diggity hopped along a dirt path. Bunnies in front of her and bunnies in the back. The line came to an end in a small cluster near a tree stump, at the edge of the Everfree forest. Fluttershy stood next to the tree stump, clipboard resting on top and pen clasped in her mouth. A basket of apples was placed next to the stump, snacks for later and for now. She waggled it back and forth, marking the clipboard, nodding with each bunny joining the group. It took several hops down the trail for Dinky to gather up all the bunnies. Her eggs ached a bit, even as she finished rounding up all the bunnies for the annual census. She walked over to the stump and sat down beside Fluttershy, stretching out her legs in front and waggling them. Fluttershy looked down at Dinky for a moment before returning to her writing. The bunnies all hopped to and fro in the little clearing. But after a few minutes, Fluttershy dropped the pencil onto the clipboard. She walked away in front of the stump and wagged the wing at the bunnies.
Thank you all for participating,
she said, smiling at the bunnies.
I hope to see you all next year.
All but one of the bunnies hopped off, the remaining one walking up to Fluttershy's side. She looked down at him and extended a wing, patting him on the head.
Thank you very much, Angel,
she said, beaming. She looked to Dinky as the fall trotted over.
And thanks to you too, Dinky. The bunny census went off without a hitch.
Dinky giggled as Angel bent low at the waist, sweeping a foreleg out in front of him.
It was fun, Miss Fluttershy.
She looked at the last of the bunnies, hopping out of sight.
There were a lot of little babies.
She reached the foreleg up and scratched below her right ear.
Where did they all come from?
Fluttershy's yellow coat turned a brilliant red scarlet, and her wings folded up. Possibly it's scaring her head and face.
Well, I see it's about when I'm older, right?
Fluttershy merely nodded. Hunger gnawed at it, exhausted, dulled senses. How long had it been since it eaten? A minute? 2? 10? Tiny wings carried the little Parasprite back and forth in a zigzag pattern through the air, darting to and fro as it left home and ventured into daylight. The sun hurt its eyes, and it squinted. For a moment, the tiny bug almost flew back to home, but a sudden smell sent it hurtling along. Food, 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 food. The thought repeated in its simple brain as it followed the scent. Eyes opened briefly, risking the sting of the sun for the sight of a large basket of apples. Within moments, it reached the basket, jaws unhinged, and it chomped out a large chunk of apple, swallowing it whole. Within half a second, the rest of the apple was gone. The Parasprite cooed in relief as its warm feeling settled over it. Eyelids finally shut as exhaustion overtook it. The bright red Parasprite settled down into the basket, wings folding tight against itself as sleep finally overtook it. Dinky's head shot around for the sound of a crunch behind her. She looked around, but saw nothing more than the stump and basket of apples. She looked to Fluttershy, but the Pegasus had her wings folded up over her head.
Miss Fluttershy?
She held up a foreleg.
Are you all right?
Fluttershy's wings moved slightly as she peered out, backing up a few steps. Dinky followed her gaze to the path leading to Ponyville. Voices wafted through the air as two indistinct shapes appeared, quickly resolving themselves into Ditzy and Trixie, the former floating a half a meter above the ground, and the latter trotting along with a box beside her. So, I think Pokey is wanting to use my desk to sharpen his horn, Trixie said, rolling her eyes. A muffin coated with hot sauce floated up to her mouth as she took a bite out of it. Ditzy sighed. Better than your office window.
Mama! Miss Trixie!
Dinky cried out, galloping forward.
I helped Miss Fluttershy with the bunny census and helped Angel with his little house because he had a lot of trash inside it.
She skated to a halt right in front of the two mares, leaving two little furrows in the dirt from her hooves. Ditzy floated down next to Dinky, wrapping her left wing around her daughter. Her left eye slid down, and she smiled. Did you have a good time helping Miss Fluttershy with her chores? Dinky nodded.
Yeah. All the bunnies were there, and I hopped along with them, and Angel was really nice to me.
She stood up on her two hind legs, wrapping her forelegs around her mama's neck. People, I've been doing this for so many months. I'm starting to die from diabetes with Dinky sayings. Trixie grinned at the two, but it faded as she turned and saw Fluttershy with her wings over her head. Angel stood by her, forelegs crossed, and his right foot tapping the ground. She rolled her eyes and stepped back. I'll be over here, she muttered, box of muffins trailing beside her, as she trotted a few meters back. Ditzy and Dinky walked up to Fluttershy. The yellow-coated Pegasus barely lowered her wings as she approached.
Sorry,
She whispered, voice buried carefully over the gentle breeze.
I know Trixie's not that bad, and she saved Equestria and all.
Her cheeks turned scarlet once more, as she seemed to shrink down to her torso. Ditzy smiled at her friend. It's fine. So, did you and Dinky have a good day? Fluttershy's head peeked out a bit.
It was,
she said, a small smile beginning to form on her mouth.
The bunny census is all finished for another year, and Angel got his house cleaned out properly.
She turned and looked over her shoulder at the stump and basket of apples.
I have your payment and a basket of apples for you for your extra hard work today.
Dinky walked around to Fluttershy, her face scrunched in concentration. The basket wobbled a bit, but floated up and over, landing in front of Ditsy. 3 silver coins on the cupboard also floated up, dangling as they were levitated to Ditsy's saddlebag and inside. Ditsy patted her daughter on the head, smiling at the improvement her daughter had shown in levitation.
Good luck, Muffin.
She looked at Trixie, but her gaze went far down back the path to Ponyville, to the blue unicorn idling away with a box of muffins. One eye went to Fluttershy, the rest of Ditsy's head following.
Thanks, Fluttershy, but Trixie's over there and...
She trailed off as her yellow Pegasus merely nodded.
Okay, have a good day and see you Monday.
She knelt down, grabbed the basket with her mouth, and trotted off. Dinky threw her forelegs around Fluttershy's neck.
See you next week,
she said, before turning and trotting off to her mother's side. She paused, turned around, and waved at Fluttershy, who raised a foreleg and waved back. Ditsy and Dinky raised Trixie as the box floated up to her muzzle in the lid oven.
Through,
Ditsy said, causing Trixie to jump a half-meter in the air and the box to jerk in midair.
I wasn't eating my muffins,
she blurted out. Her head shot from Ditsy to the box, then to Dinky. Her face turned to brilliant scarlet as a leaf blew by the wind. Her mouth turned up in a wide, first smile.
So...
Ditsy glanced at the box, still floating a bit higher in the air.
So...
she repeated, a slight grin on her muzzle. Silence reigned between the two. Dinky looked from her mother to her magic teacher, then back.
Was the muffin good, Miss Trixie?
She finally asked, canting her head to the side. Trixie's head shot over, Keith fluttering about behind her. The box slowly floated down, and 2 muffins were levitated out, one to Ditsy and one to Dinky.
It was a good muffin,
she finally said. She looked at Ditsy, and the basket still clenched in her teeth.
I'll take that for you,
she said somewhat sheepishly, grabbing hold of the basket of apples with her magic and gently floating it out of her mouth. She looked at Fluttershy, then down the path that led back to the Ponyville post office, into the Doom's apartment above.
So, lunch?
Ditsy merely smiled at Trixie before the 3 began trotting off back, the basket and box floating right behind them. She looked at Trixie as she ate her muffin, savoring each bite.
Ready for next week?
She asked, one eye drifted at Dinky.
I mean, after what happened with...
I assure you,
Dinky's safety at the show is foremost in my mind,
she interrupted. She held up a hoof, and some light coalesced around it.
It's just some simple sleight of hoof illusions, nothing else, Ditsy. You made sure of that when we talked about Dinky assisting me.
She looked down at the young unicorn.
Besides, if that happened, who else would be the great and powerful Trixie's assistant?
She stood up straight, gesticulating widely with her forelegs.
Only the best can assist Trixie as he puts on the most amazing magic show ever seen by pony eyes.
She dropped back to all 4 hoofs.
Besides, I've too much on my plate with getting Carrot Top and the other farmers organized, and the other details for the evening time festival.
She rolled her eyes.
So much to do, so little time. For all of his wanting to rip a hole in the fabric of the universe, Pokey really is great.
She suddenly eyed Trixie as she leaned in close.
Just don't tell him that, okay? Ditsy nodded. Cross my heart and hope to fly, stick a cookie in my eye, she recited. I just hope everything gets all smoothed out in time.
One eye drifted up, in the direction of the sun-blazing head.
You know.
Trixie's mouth formed a thin line.
I know, and I assure you, Ditsy, barring anything major, the evening time festival should go off without a hitch, she tilted her head. I just assumed us, didn't I?
Ditsy merely nodded, finishing her muffin as the 3 continued walking back to Ponyville.
Yes, he's got a grindstone in the office. Now, if he weren't the best secretary at this side of Canterlot, I'd keep him because without him you'd drown in paperwork.
Trixie kept her mouth shut as she opened the door to Ditsy's apartment and walked in. She dropped a box of muffins on the table in the kitchen and floated the basket of apples right next to it. She glanced at the box, then the basket with its red and yellow apples in it. She walked over to the fridge, opened the door, and peeked inside.
Got any salsa, Ditsy?
Ditsy sucked her uniform jacket off, placed it on a cut right next to the door.
Second self, in the back.
She looked at Trixie, one eye focusing on the mayor.
Getting a craving to experiment again?
Trixie stepped back from the fridge and shut it. She walked to the table, the half-full jar of salsa trailing behind her.
Some ponies simply cannot appreciate my very palate. She looked at Dizzy and Dinky as she stared back. The present company accepted, of course. She looked back to the table, eyeing the basket. Now then, I wonder. Her voice trailed off as she focused on the basket, or more precise, the apples within. Dizzy, Dinky. Dizzy looked over at Trixie. Yes. Trixie pointed at the basket. Yes, it's the same basket of apples I carried from Fluttershy's cottage, correct? Dinky walked over to the table. She hopped up in a chair and leaned in close. I think so, Miss Trixie. She twisted her head around it, eyes narrowing. What about it? Dizzy walked over, one eye on Trixie and the other on the basket. Her left eye slowly moved from focusing on the unicorn to looking over the basket. She twitched slightly. The apples. Two of them are yellow. Her left eye rotated back to Trixie, almost stepping back. All the apples in the basket were red before. Trixie nodded. Good eye. No offense. She looked back to the basket. No stems. Wrong shape. Her eyes widened. I don't think these are apples anymore. The basket shuddered. Dinky edged closer, but suddenly was enveloped in a bubble of magic and floated off the chair. Dizzy slid over to stand behind her daughter. Small wings suddenly sprouted from the round objects, and large eyes opened up. A sound emanated from the things as they all lifted off from the basket in a simply rehearsed takeoff pattern. They spread throughout the kitchen and living room, becoming a living cloud of cute. Dinky gasped. She held up a hoof, and one of the creatures landed on it. Two more rubbed her mane, causing her to giggle. Cute! She looked at Dizzy. Mama, can I get one, please? She hopped around, flashing big shiny eyes. Please. Dizzy shook her head, but an entire squadron of the creatures hovered around her head. A pair of them landed on her left wing. She raised it around and eyed them with her left eye. The right focused squarely on Dinky. I don't know. She turned her head to Trixie. Have you ever seen anything like these? Trixie's right eyebrow raised. She waved a foreleg around, batting away a few of them. I've never seen them before. Not sure I want to see them again. She raised the other foreleg as a few others swarmed around her. Shoo! Shoo! She glanced at the basket. Okay, so where did all these come from? Did they spawn in the basket? She stepped up to the basket once more. Fluttershy wouldn't give us a basket of these things knowingly. She went to Dizzy. Right? Dizzy's eyes rolled as he let loose a sigh. Right, Trixie. Fluttershy's nervous around you, not wanting to send a basket of whatever these things are after you. She gasped as a few of them slid their rather pliable bodies under the box of muffins. Hey! Get away from those! She hopped up, flying over to the table and grabbing the box with her forelegs. Get away from my muffins! The box top flipped open, and Dizzy's hooves and prodding from some of the creatures. Two of them dove at the muffins, their jaws descending and opening impossibly wide. Each one engulfed a muffin, swallowing them with a single gulp. Dizzy looked at Trixie. A little help here? Trixie looked around. Her horn glowed, and the creature stopped in midair, held by fine telekinesis. Okay, get at them, she announced, grinning. Was there any... Several of the creatures scrunched up, coughed a few times before hacking up globs of wet masses. The globs landed on the floor with wet plops. Wings quickly emerged from the rapidly solidifying bodies and eyes opened up. Within seconds, the number of creatures doubled. Trixie's jaw opened for a moment, and her cheeks turned green, and she took in several deep breaths. Oh, gross! She exclaimed. So says the mayor who likes Tabasco sauce and mayonnaise on her hay fries. Trixie snorted. Ha! Ha! She looked back as several of the creatures flew into an open window. Oh, no, you don't! She slammed it shut, rattling the entire pane. Gotcha! She declared, rising up on her hind legs and striking a pose. Dinky looked at Trixie and gasped. Miss Trixie, the door! She shouted, jabbing a foreleg at it. Trixie smirked and tossed her mane over her head. The door, briefly forgotten about and left ajar, slammed shut. The deadbolt also locked. Good eye, Dinky, Trixie said, a large grin on her face. She looked about at all the creatures buzzing around the room. All right, now let's get a bag, keep them away from the food, and... Miss Trixie? Trixie paused, focusing once more on Dinky. Yeah, Dinky. Dinky swallowed. Oh. Some of the creatures were on the other side of the door. She shrank down a bit. Sorry, I should have said that, right?
Trixie wheeled about on her back heels, her horn flaring with magic, as she unbolted the door and flung it open, only to reveal empty space. She galloped through the door, head darting about. Where are they? Which way did you go? Which way? She skidded to a halt at the top of the stairs, leading down to the Ponyville post office. She looked back to see Ditsy flying about, battling the creatures with her hooves. Ditsy! Some of those things have escaped! Ditsy's head turned, lining her left eye up with Trixie. I know! I've got strabismus, not deafness! She looked over at Dinky, waved her forelegs in the air, batting about the flying balls of hunger. Dinky! Be careful! Trixie gasped as several of the things flew open at her in the open door. She slammed it shut once more. This is getting ridiculous! She looked back at the stairs, then to the door. Wait. She groaned. Stepped to the door. Ditsy? There was a sudden crash on the opposite side. Get away from the pantry! There was a pause before Ditsy spoke again. Yeah? Trixie's head darted from the door to the stairs. How is it in there? There was another crash, this one louder than before. Fine, just get away from my daughter! Now! Trixie flung the door open, dashing in and closing it just before the closest creatures could go through. She looked around, and a number of little balls somehow multiplied. Wait, what in the hay? She looked at Ditsy as she covered over Dinky, legs waving about, her eyes bright with an air of fire. Where did all these come from? The cabinet door suddenly burst open. A small cloud of the creatures emerged. Trixie groaned, and her horn flared with magic. Ditsy, I hate to say this, but I am going to need Dinky's help with these. Ditsy glanced at her daughter, then floated up a bit, close to the ceiling. One eye focused squarely on her muffin. Dinky swallowed and screwed her eyes shut in concentration. Some of the creatures stopped in mid-flight, flying back against the beating of her tiny wings. Trixie smiled at her student. Okay, good. She looked around. Got any, I don't know, bags or something? She let out a sigh. Until we can get these things back to where it is they came from, it's probably the best we could do. She winced as the lamp was knocked over, falling to the floor and breaking apart. Ditsy slammed a foreleg at a small pile of shopping bags on top of the counter. What about the ones that flew out the door? She asked, drifting to the window looking out. They could be anywhere. Trixie grunted and lifted the bags up. Okay, Dinky, right into the bags! She looked at Ditsy. One of us has to go after them, at least to warn Ponyville. See, several of the creatures were telekinetically tossed in the bag. And I hate to say this, but you could cover more ground than I. One eye focused on Dinky, the other on Trixie. My daughter. I swear I'll keep her safe, Trixie said, a slight edge to her voice. She glanced to the door and a few of the things hovering near it. Some of them led to the doorknob. Is it just me? Or are they getting smarter? Ditsy flew over to the door, waving her legs at them and darting them back. They hovered just out of reach of her hose, some darting in and out. Trixie, how fast can you open the door? The unicorn grunted as a fine sheet of sweat appeared on her forehead, right below her horn. Piece of cake, she muttered. She turned around and focused fully on Ditsy and the door. I'll count down, okay? At Ditsy's nod, she began. 3, 2, 1, go! She shouted, unlocking the deadbolt and wrenching the door open. Ditsy shot past the door jamb, a few of the creatures trying to follow, but Trixie slammed the door shut in their tiny faces. Ditsy glanced down at the stairs a moment before flying down, merging into the back room of the post office, and into another cloud of them. Oh no! She saw Silver Script at the counter, back clutching his nuzzle and swinging it wildly. Silver Script, are you all right? Silver Script flapped his wings and eyes bulged out. He swung at a group of them, heading some and sending them crashing into the wall. No idea, he spat out. A few of them floated down and they seemed cute, but then they ate my nuts and hunted a few more of them. His wings buzzed, creating a small updraft that dispersed the cloud. Shoo! Shoo! Ditsy growled and flew at the creatures, stopping a couple of meters above Silver Script. Did any get out of here? She asked, batting at the balls. She turned her head, her entire body following through the motion. Any more food in here? Silver Script shook his head, the bat knocking a few of the things away. Yes and no. He thrust a wing at the door. A few got out before I closed the... Die! His face crunched up, and the bat covered his mouth. Why? Won't You stand still, or hover still!
Pinkie swallowed. Okay, thanks!
She flew at the door, making sure nothing else was near before throwing it open, dashing it out, and slamming it shut. She looked around, her head, ears, and eyes all slurring independently, quickly taking in the entire street. She flew along, wings taking in every air current, senses alert for things. There were a number of ponies on the street. A debate flared inside Trixie.
Do I shout about what's going on? Oh no. Falls like a daisy. Those two were sure to cause a stampede and... a Parasprite? Now I had to go get a banjo.
Trixie's eyes locked onto the voice she heard. She ignored the sudden pain lancing through her skull as she saw Pinkie Pie and one of the things, no, Parasprites, hovering above her head. The pink pony's voice twisted in disgust before she galloped up. Trixie gasped. Her wings were a blur as she shot off after Pinkie.
She knows what they are and wants a banjo?
She slowed down as Pinkie entered an alley.
Pinkie, wait!
She cried out, making a sharp turn into the alley's mouth. She threw out her legs and skidded to a halt. Turning upside down and backwards in midair, Trixie grunted, kicking and righting herself.
Pinkie, where are you?
She stopped talking as she beheld the empty alley. She flew up to each garbage can, each crate, and even a piece of paper, examining each one.
Pinkie? Pinkie!
She looked around, slight feeling of vertigo washing over her from one too many turns, and her eyes growing straight one too many times. She closed her eyes for a moment before reopening them, hoping against hope that she wouldn't be alone in the alley, and having them dash against the Catamine Ridge as she was alone. The Pegasus looked around once more before flying back into the street. There were a few more Parasprites in the air. The ponies on the street had begun nosing the Minerals.
Okay, she mumbled to herself. All I have to do is find Pinkie and Ponyville before...
She stopped as a Parasprite coughed off another of his kind, startling Daisy into rearing back and nickering,
Oh, horse apples.